Right now, there is a voice in your head reading these words. You did not ask it to start. You cannot ask it to stop. And if you try, it will narrate the trying. Most people have never noticed this. The ones who do never stop noticing. Because the strange part is not that the voice exists. The strange part is who it sounds like. It sounds like you, but it answers you. It argues with you. It comforts you when you are alone. And if it is you, then who is listening? There is a moment, sometime around your second or third year of life, when something quietly enters your mind and never leaves. You don't remember it happening. No one does. Before that moment, your thoughts had no narrator. You moved through the world without commentary. You wanted things, you felt things, but nothing inside you described what was happening. And then, slowly, a voice began to form. At first, it was outside of you. It belonged to the adults around you. They told you what to do. They told you what you were feeling. They told you who you were. Then one day, without warning, you began saying those things to yourself, out loud at first, then quieter, then silent. The voice moved inward, and it has been speaking ever since. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is that the voice never stopped being someone else. Psychologists have studied this for almost a century. They call it inner speech. They have watched it form in children, watched it disappear in certain brain injuries, watched it fragment in conditions no one fully understands. And what they keep finding is this. The voice you call your thoughts uses the same machinery as the voice you use to speak out loud. The same region of the brain, the same muscle activations, just slightly suppressed. The same rhythm, the same accent, the same pauses. When you think a sentence, your throat moves, barely, almost imperceptibly. But it moves. You are not thinking. You are whispering. And someone inside you is listening. This is where it begins to feel different, because if you are the one whispering, who is the one being whispered to? There is a quiet test you can run on yourself right now while you are reading this. Stop reading for 1 second and try to notice the voice in your head. Try to catch it before it speaks. Try to be there before the sentence forms. You can't. By the time you notice the thought, the voice has already finished saying it. You are not the one creating the words. You are the one hearing them, a fraction of a second after they appear, which means you are not the speaker. You are the audience, and the audience does not know what the speaker will say next. This is what the brain hides from you every second of every day. You believe you are thinking, but what you are actually doing is overhearing. There is a part of your mind that talks, and there is another part of your mind that listens and then claims it was the one talking all along. The two parts have never met, and one of them is lying about who you are. So who is the voice? For a long time, researchers assumed it was just a tool, a way of organizing thought, a leftover from learning to speak as a child. But the deeper they looked, the stranger it became, because the voice doesn't only talk when you tell it to. It talks when you are trying to sleep. It talks when you are trying to be silent. It interrupts you. It comments on what you just thought. It judges you. It rehearses conversations you will never have. And it has been doing this every waking second of your life, for as long as you can remember being a person. If it were a tool, you would be able to put it down. You cannot. So the question is not what the voice does. The question is what the voice is. Here is where the explanation stops being comfortable. In the 1930s, a psychologist named Lev Vygotsky noticed something while watching children. When children were learning to do something difficult, they would talk to themselves out loud. They would narrate their own actions. They would coach themselves through tasks. As they got older, this narration didn't disappear. It went underground. It became inner speech. But here is the part most people miss. The voice the child internalized was not their own voice. It was the voice of whoever was teaching them, a parent, a caregiver, a sibling, a teacher, the first voice that told them how to think about themselves. That voice never left. It is still in there. It is still talking. And every time you criticize yourself, every time you encourage yourself, every time you argue with yourself in the shower at 2 a.m., you are not having a conversation with yourself. You are listening to a recording of someone else, made when you were too young to remember. And this is where it gets harder to ignore. Because if the voice in your head was installed by other people, then the things you tell yourself, the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening, are not really yours. They are echoes. The harshness you direct at yourself was someone else's harshness first. The reassurance was someone else's voice first. The doubt was someone else's doubt. You inherited a narrator, and you have spent your entire life believing it was you. But that still isn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part is what happens when the voice stops. Neurologists have documented cases of people who, due to specific kinds of brain damage or rare meditative states, lose access to inner speech entirely. The voice goes quiet, and when it does, something they did not expect happens. They report that the sense of being a self begins to fade, not in a frightening way, not in a confusing way, just quietly. The constant narrator that told them who they were, what they wanted, what they were doing, gone. And without it, the feeling of being a specific, continuous person becomes thin, almost transparent, as if the I they had carried their whole life was being held together by the voice that kept saying I, which means the self may not be a thing, it may be a sentence, spoken constantly by no one, to no one. Sit with that for a moment. The you that wakes up every morning, that remembers yesterday, that worries about tomorrow, that loves the people you love, that you may not exist outside of the voice that keeps describing it. If the voice stopped, the description would stop. And if the description stopped, there might be nothing left to call you. Just awareness, just a body, just a room with no one inside it telling itself it is occupied. This is why you cannot stop the voice, not because you lack the willpower, but because stopping the voice is closer to dying than you realize. The voice is not in your mind. The voice is doing the work of being you, and every word it speaks to keep you here. There is one last thing. If you have ever wondered why the voice in your head sometimes says things you didn't want it to say, cruel things, intrusive things, things that don't sound like you at all, this is why. Because it isn't you. It never was. It is a conversation that started before you had a self. Between voices you didn't choose, in a language you didn't invent, about a person who didn't yet exist. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, you appeared. You were not the speaker. You were not the listener. You were the thing the conversation was about. And one day, the conversation will end, not loudly, not with any announcement, just one final sentence, spoken inside a quiet head that no one will be left to hear.